2020, and I would like to call the order this facilities workshop, a special board meeting. First and foremost, we want to thank those in attendance tonight. Thank you for being here. We have allotted 2 hours tonight to have a facilities workshop discussion, not only to bring our new board members up to date, but also a refresher to the rest of us. Those of you that had an opportunity to look at the agenda on board docs saw there are several documents there that date back to 2018, some of them. Some of them are newer. So we're going to start tonight with a facilities presentation that the district has put together. At our last meeting, board members were tasked with bringing their priorities or what they see as priorities after I can call us a district-wide visit that we did as a board to go visit several of the schools. We were over at the transportation center. So after the presentation tonight, we will have an opportunity to make any observations we have. I will ask that we go through our, I don't want to call them ABCs or 1, 2, 3s, but just open the discussion. Maybe some of our questions will be answered throughout the presentation. I don't have to ask you guys because you all are very good note takers. I'm sure you'll take your notes, and we'll direct any questions or anything after the district does their presentation. And hopefully, what I'm hoping we accomplish tonight is a productive discussion that points us somewhere. We've had this conversation to where a lot of meetings, a lot of planning, but very little action. Knowing the sensitivity of the issue, the components that would bring these plans to fruition, being taxpayer dollars and everything that comes with that, makes these meetings or these decisions hard. Hopefully after tonight we can, if not set something more concrete, get the conversation really in action to where hopefully soon we can bring some resolution to this, bring some possible ideas as to what the next step is. With that, Dr. Hurst, I don't know who is in charge of your presentation tonight.
Yes, we're going to have Jeanette open up.
Okay.
My only question or comment is I want to be able to ask questions during the presentation if it applies to that slide. Since Mike said we'll ask them at the end.
If they're willing to answer.
Yeah, I think that's. Is it on?
Mm-mm.
The green light's on. Okay, operator error. It still doesn't sound on. Anyways.
It is. We're good.
So I think questions as we go is fine. Maybe if it's something that's going to lead to a lengthier conversation, maybe towards the end, just for time's sake.
More just my
thought.
only comments are clarifying
Okay.
kinds of things.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
I guess just to open up, after our tour that we went on to the different sites, the board asked us to kind of come back with some solutions or options for you guys. And so that's what we're prepared for today. We are kind of framing our solutions and ideas around some questions and ideal scenarios. Sure, I'll take that. One more thing to manage, oh boy. So basically, the guiding question of how can we improve what we currently have to really meet that instructional vision and the instructional goals of the district and the non-instructional goals. Really kind of centered around an ideal state. There's a lot of different ideals when you're thinking about instructional space and instructional facilities. So essentially increasing capacity at the elementary schools, which are now K-6, creating a long-term solution for the OHS 600 wing and OHS in general. They have quite a bit of space concerns there currently. An ideal state would not have any classrooms in portables. I think we can all agree on that. Portables aren't, potentially the best place to have instruction, but you got to do what you got to do in the time. Permanent location for the OSD preschool as well. Increasing safety. Safety is definitely a huge priority in OSD and across the state. And then also improving operational efficiency in our operations areas around food service, technology, custodial maintenance, all across the board. So tagging off, this is going to be fun. Tagging off, I guess, on the operational side. So one of the things that has been discussed at the board level previously is a central warehouse space and creating a long-term solution for our food service and other operational facilities. Sweet. Thanks, Pete. So some of the information that was previously presented to the board with some updated figures. So the total number of meals that we have that we're serving per day has increased by approximately 60% with our enrollment increase and breakfast after the bell. That's a very large increase in meals served. And in the next slide, we have that broken down into the number of items. So this is the number of items that is being served to our students every single day. So that's prepped food that's not necessarily claimed meals, but we have different requirements with the program, so we have to serve the certain number of meals essentially. So everyone has to be served. When you're talking about the warehouse, you want to go back up, sorry. When you're talking about the warehouse, so we have 7 incoming deliveries from various vendors throughout the week. Most of those are Monday through Thursday, or all of those are Monday through Thursday. And then outgoing deliveries, we have 3 deliveries going to each site per day. So from the warehouse to each school 3 times a day.
So when you say incoming deliveries, you're meaning like typically semi-loads
Yes.
or large, really large containers.
Yes.
Kinds of
yeah,
things.
it might not necessarily be the whole load that's ours, but
Right.
the milk delivery, the vegetable, like
Right.
those big
And then
deliveries.
those deliveries to each of the schools are company, or
Our
district box truck
Yes.
size,
yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, and I believe they have a milk run that they do in the morning, and there's certain runs that they do, but 3 times per day, that box truck is going out to the different schools, every single school. Okay. Another thing we manage with is custodial storage and custodial needs. So currently, right now, we go through about 9 pallets of toilet paper, 12 pallets of paper towels, 3 pallets of soap, and 16 pallets of trash bags per year. Right now, we order essentially as needed in pallets, I believe. And so, because that's usually where you get your most bang for your buck. But if you could order in larger quantities, potentially you could get a better bulk price on those. But currently we can't facilitate that because we don't have the space to store that. Also going on that is paper. We go through a lot of paper at the school district, as you guys can imagine. So right now a box of paper, just to buy a box of paper is $42. And we actually went and did a contract for 3 truckloads of paper to be delivered at different times. And so we were able to get a price of $24 per box of paper. So that's a very significant discount. So just so you guys can kind of get an idea of the type of money that could potentially be saved with bulk purchasing. Obviously, different things cost, get different price discounts. So it's not all equal. There's other things that I've listed that we could potentially benefit for in bulk purchase and kind of centralizing purchasing that buildings do the purchasing of, such as envelopes and facial tissue. On the food service side, they go through a lot more than I even realized. Paper products. So they go through 25 cases of foam trays, 12 cases of paper plates, 20 cases of sporks per week. So if we could bulk purchase that, potentially, buy pallets of those items, that could potentially be a cost savings as well if we had the space to facilitate that. And I'm going to have Greg kind of talk about some of the indirect benefits of having a central warehouse, what could be utilized if we move the current spaces we have.
Hey, look at that. Works. Good evening. How are you? So Jeanette doesn't have to talk the whole time, and you can hear a few different voices. Some of the indirect benefits of more storage space. Currently, we utilize some of our storage space at the high school for things that aren't high school. We have some secure storage there. We have tables. We have chairs. So we could get more athletic storage at the high school if we move some of that away. Surplus. We have a facility that we stick some surplus in. It's not real big, but if we had more surplus space, maybe we could hold on to some chairs and tables and desks and a little longer, have maybe like a little store, as you would put, where you could inventory things, and when somebody needs something, they can come look and see if that's what they're looking for, and a little more revolving with our equipment and furniture. Tech storage. Right now, Tech has a small storage space at the high school in the VOAG building that is definitely not adequate for what we need. They could use quite a bit more storage to keep more inventory. More food options for the students. We also looked at centralized prep and food service. If we had a space that we could expand where maybe we can prep dry goods and send them out to the schools rather than have them done within the school in a mass assembly line type thing. And some things that we were just throwing around that we didn't even put on here was more bulk purchasing. Maybe we have a co-op with our bus garage. Maybe we can co-op with the city on ice melt for the winter time, or just other things that you don't, until you start digging into it, you don't think about. So lots of options.
So what is the solution, or a solution? So there is a proposed existing facility that would need minimal remodeling to accommodate our needs. And those needs could be, the needs that could be addressed is the inventory surplus, dry storage, cold storage, freezer. We could have plenty of space for bulk custodial purchases. Indirectly, we could affect the technology and athletics departments and create more storage space for them at the high school, or even at the new facility, depending on what the needs are and that space allowance. So, a proposed existing facility for $3.5 million approximately, with including remodel cost, could be a good potential solution for the district. That would be a long-term solution that could carry us well into the future, obviously depending on enrollment growth and all of that good stuff. Okay, since it's quiet, we're gonna move on. Okay, so the next area is safety, and we're gonna let Greg talk about this stuff.
Okay, we've talked about access controls many times, and the last time we discussed it, there was an option I suggested we were looking into, and we asked to get a quote. We got this quote back at about $500,000 for all the sites for this particular system. And then we also just yesterday, so it didn't make it into we got a quote back on another system. And in discussions building this presentation, we decided we need to back up a step. We need to develop the plan of what we want for access management and what works in each building so that our students still have the flow of the school, but we get what we want as a school and as a district. Do we want to be able to lock every door at one time? Or do we just want to be able to track who unlocks doors? Or do we want to stick with the keys we have in most places and only use access controls in certain areas? All those questions we need to answer, we haven't developed a plan yet. And before we spend any money like this, we need to develop a plan. What do we want? What's going to work? And let's try to look at all the things that we don't see right away.
How long do you think it will take to develop that plan?
Well, we're going to have to work with the police department and the fire department on that, and then involve all the administration. Let's get some input. And I would like to see the administration take it to their safety committees in each building. Let's get all the input as to, I mean, the more input we get, the better plan we're going to come up with. So it could take 3 to 6 months. But
So if 500,000, if you had the locking system and you got another quote, do you think that 500,000 with the other quote, was that more or less than this number? I'm just a yes or no. I'm not going to ask the number.
And is this per site, Greg?
No, this is
This-
all the sites, right?
this particular system is all sites.
Okay.
It's minimal hardware. And as you can see in the summary, this system replaces the cylinder core where your key goes in. Then you get an electronic key that has to be charged. This doesn't really give us any control of the doors. It's $500,000. The other system is more like the existing locks we have on Wahitas, Scootney, and Wahitas. Hiawatha, Scootney, and Wahitas. It was $2.5 million.
Okay.
So, and they have more features, but I don't know that, we have to dig into it more. I don't know that they have all the features we may want. So that's,
So your number could fluctuate by $0 to $3 million.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
But you think it's going to take 3 to 6 months to
I
come
would,
up with
yeah,
the best
the best
safety
plan,
plan?
the best safety plan.
Okay.
Just like we said before, we want them to be safe, we want them to be secure, but we want them to be schools too. And they got to flow.
Right. Okay, thank you. Did you have a question that I bumped into?
No, I wrote down the exact
Oh,
same
okay.
things you asked.
Okay. Gotcha.
So just some other things that came up when we talk about safety measures and costs. Securing our sites with more fencing so we can control who comes and goes. Single point entry comes into play when we talk about schools like Wahitas, Scootney, McFarland that are enclosed. The enclosed campuses, if we had single point entry is what's going to now in the future for schools. Those are relatively easy schools that we could look at putting single point entry and adding some barriers in there to control flow. I don't know if you've heard the concept SEPTED, security by design. So there's some changes we could make to our schools. Visitor check-in software. I don't know if you visited a school that had the Raptor technologies. You can't get in the school without giving them your ID. They scan your ID. They background check you right there before you go in. It's a system that we could implement for all visitors. It's used for visitors. It's used for volunteers. It's used for contractors that come on. Anyone who comes on site, if you have single point entry and you can control who's coming and going, everyone gets scanned and before they come in. And everyone's always asking for more cameras. Can never have enough cameras. And then we threw the sidewalks back on here again. We agreed with the city about 1.5 years ago for a Safe Routes to Schools grant. They were awarded the grant. It hasn't gone out to bid yet, but when it does, we'll know how much matching money we'll have to come up with for that. But it was up to $50,000 out of our pocket, so for a $1 million project. So Just-
Is there already designated areas where that would,
For where that's gonna,
Applied.
yeah, it's gonna be 7th Avenue, Ash Street, and 14th Avenue. And then, mine too? Yours? Oh. ORTC parking lot, we've talked about this. No buses have fallen through the asphalt yet. But it is on the radar and we do need to be looking at it. Y'all went out and saw that area that we were talking about and the sinking of the asphalt in the corner of the containment area for the fueling station. So that will need to be addressed. And the prioritization is going to be, you know, can we let it go for a couple more years, or if there's a big crack, we're going to have to fix it obviously right away, because we can't allow that containment area to spill anything out, and we can't allow the buses to continue to drive over that.
So now we're going to move on to general facility needs, and first up is preschool, early learning.
So this is a sketch that was done by Architect West of the CBHA building that the district was looking at as a possible purchase for early learning center and a kindergarten center. So that's the top floor and the bottom floor of the CBHA building on Main Street that has been shared in previous meetings, I believe. So we've had a couple different conversations about what are some of the pros and cons of that. So some of the pros of that are just the cost per square foot to remodel the building so that it, instead of being a medical facility, it would be a school. It is a centralized location, kind of the center of town, so it would just be in the center. And just the turnaround time to go in and to remodel it would be a short timeline versus building new construction. Some of the cons when you look at that floor plan are that it is not a big enough facility for kindergarten and preschool like we had originally intended for. Because if it could be used for kindergarten, then we could use some of the grant, the 2.3 million grant money to help with that remodel project. You can get 23 classrooms in there, but then some of them are very small and would not be the size that you would need for a kindergarten or even a preschool classroom. So it could be a big enough space for just preschool, but then you wouldn't have the grant money. The other thing with it is when you look at the drawing, if you see little dots everywhere, those are actually structural posts. So like these beautiful posts that we have in here, those are in almost every one of the classrooms when you look at that layout. And so that would also just be a concern when you have 4-year-olds and 5-year-olds running around a classroom with a pole or two in the middle of it. So that was some of our concerns. And then also in the floor plan, you don't see some of the common core spaces that they would need. There is what could be like a cafeteria area, but they would also need a gym for like a play area or PE classes, a playground area. So there was some other structural concerns that we had with it. But the biggest thing was just that we wouldn't be able to use the kindergarten class size reduction grant for that purchase. So this last slide is just what it would have cost if we still move forward with purchasing CBHA building as a possible early learning site where it would be preschool only. There may be some other things that we used that space for, but if it was mainly for preschool, it would be between 11 and 13 million to remodel it and have the spaces that we needed for that. So it could be used for preschool only, but there would still be some, like I said, those poles or some other concerns that we had with it.
Okay, now we're going to move on to K6 and some of the concerns at K6.
Good evening. This initial slide about K6 capacity is related to the number of students that come to our schools every day. We feel it's a conservative estimate based on a 5-year average and students moving from, so cohort survival is what we call it, kids moving from grade to grade. We know it isn't an exact science, but we feel like we've been pretty good at making these estimates over the last several years. This projection, however, does not include any increases in enrollment due to changes in the community based on economic or businesses coming in and affecting the number of families that live and work in our community. But you can see, I guess just the gist of the slide is currently we're just over 300 students over capacity, and we judge that based on these numbers. Certainly when you hear about the K-3 class size reduction grant, that's when you see this number about 17. And for us to access that funding in the most appropriate way, we'd need some additional classrooms. The team got together to consider the options, and this is a combination of the recommendations made from the Teeter-Crocker report and also the facilities committee work. So blending those two projects together. These are options that came out of that work. We would need 6 additional classrooms at Hiawatha. You can see those figures there for each school. The facility group also recommended the use of what we called new gyms, but could also be cafeteria spaces. McFarland would be by the preschool vacating that facility if we're able to select one of the options for a permanent house for preschool. McFarland would be able to move forward with the expected growth. This project, as what we're calling, we didn't call it a remodel option. I guess that is how we talked about it, because it'd be new construction at a current site. So I guess it's an add-on to a current facility. Just under $11 million for that option.
So I have questions on this slide. Why is Wahidas $275 per square foot and the other 3 elementaries are $350 per square foot?
Greg, maybe Greg can help us on that. That's either an error on the slide, or it could be an error in the cost of construction, because Wahidas is, I know they set it up to have additions out on that wing, and maybe we captured some savings there.
I would just say it's an error on the slide.
Okay, then-
The total cost is the same for
It's the same, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
1.85.
However, yes, if you times 5,820 square feet by $350 a square foot, it's not 1.85, it's 2.04 million also. So that changes this number. And these numbers are different than and I know it's been like 6 months since we got CSG or
CSGs. Yeah.
costs. Their cost per square foot were about 300.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah. And in
I'd
their-
rather go high.
Yeah,
than
and
low,
they're
but-
in the CSG report. They also listed, I think it's in one of the documents on there. It said 8% increase in 2020, 5% increase in 2021, 4%.
Okay, so you were
in
adding
2020.
those percentages on.
Yeah, we were trying
To be prepared.
add it up a little bit. Give
Well,
a little
I'd rather
more.
go high and
Yeah.
end up not costing that much, as opposed to, oh, we're out of money and we still have $3 million more. Okay.
Yeah.
So, just to, I guess, piggyback on that, so that 1.85 is about in between what the cost per the difference between the 275 and the 350 cost per square foot. So it's like an in-between amount.
Yeah.
I just did the calculations.
Okay.
I was just wondering about
You,
Ludacogga.
you need to turn on your mic. Sorry. Push it down hard and leave it until the light comes on.
Okay, so looking at the need for more space at Ludacogga and Scootney, why are they replacing portables? We're not going to get any more space then, are we?
I don't know if I understand what your question,
So-
what are you asking?
Ludacogga and Scootney have more needs with 102 students over capacity and 95 students over capacity. Wouldn't we need more classrooms at those two schools versus the ones that didn't need as much?
So just on the capacity slide, so that does not include current portables. So that doesn't include like the classroom space in portables that we have right now. So those students have a place to go. So basically by replacing the portables, you're correct. We're not necessarily creating additional space for future growth, but it's not like those students are just sitting outside having class out in the elements.
So
They're in
your numbers
portables
for
right now.
6, 4, 6, and 6 are to replace portables. That's all, is what you're saying.
Yes,
That's why there's 4 at Luticaga.
yes, because there's
Okay.
4 portables, I believe.
And
Okay.
the thinking in the group was to provide options for the community and the board to consider.
But we're not gaining anything for Luticaga for Luticaga or Scootney room-wise, right? To take
Right,
that
so you'll
further-
see so the price tag on this option is 11 million. You'll see another option that comes up that
With the
meets
added-
that standard,
okay.
yep.
I jumped
Or
ahead.
somewhere in between, whatever
Okay.
the board decides eventually. Okay? So the next slide provides some initial clarity around that, but it's this idea about perhaps constructing a new facility, a PK6 facility on the 80 acres on Lee and 14th. This project would classify for the K3 class size reduction funding. And it would also eliminate the need for the major renovations at each elementary, which is what we're talking about up here. You would create that additional capacity in a new facility. And so experiencing a reduction in students at each of the current K6 sites, making them more efficient for a price tag of about 25 to 30 million, so significantly more than the option above.
But that would also take all of preschool?
Yes.
Our conversations
Okay.
and the design would include a wing for preschool.
Okay.
How
She broke it.
how long is our grant still good for?
We have to be in the design phase by June, this June.
And if not, then we'll not have the opportunity to take advantage of that 2.3 million from the state, correct?
And we've had this since 2016.
Sounds about right.
Yep. And keep in mind, it's for 10 rooms, permanent space, and it's prorated per 10. So if you don't build 10, you get the
For
percentage.
K3.
For K3, reduction, yep.
Yeah, you can build classrooms for other grades as long as by doing that, you're creating classrooms for K3.
Yep. As long as some way it lowers the class size, it's good, but if you don't lower 10 classes, if you only lower 5, it's only 1.1 million, so.
Okay.
Next up, OHS.
So unlike K through 6, where the growth remains stagnant over years, you can see here at the bottom in the bold, actually the projections is that growth is going to climb above 1,400 at Othello High School. You can look at the student capacity currently, 1,073. 1,073, and the current student count is 1,191, which puts us over capacity. But again, considering the growth over a number of years, going up to 1,400, and looking at the next slide, there's a recommendation from the committee that this is what we would need to do based on, again, the Tita Crocker report and work from the committee. So the first one just talks about the 600 wing, which we've been talking about for the past several months, and really replacing the 600 wing and considering that to be at 10 classrooms, so about 970 per square feet per classroom, so looking at about $3.4 million. And then looking at, again, replacing the portables, looking at that cost at about $1.7 million. That's 5 classrooms. Looking at the 200 wing, replacing 2 classrooms there amounts to about $680,000. And then considering the expected growth over a number of years, so 8 classrooms for the expected growth, that amounts to about $2.7 million. So it's just shy of about $8.5 million for that cost.
questions on the high school? Okay, track. We didn't walk the whole track. It was cold that day, wasn't it? So we got some more pictures of the patches. The surfacing lifted up. We did get one estimate back. It was pretty conservative. Little less than what we thought originally. Our quotes, the first one that came out 6 months ago said $500,000 to just redo the track. We contacted KCDA and got in contact with 2 vendors through KCDA. The first one came back at $270 to redo the track, and then about $380,000 to do some improvements and move things around and make it, excuse me, make the track more user-friendly for the 200 plus kiddos that are out there and the very few staff we have watching them. There's a lot of kids and only so many coaches, and for the growth of the program. We have 1 discus throw station. We have 200 kids out there. We have 2 shot put throw stations, you know. So expanding those, bringing our sand pits, our long jump, triple jumps up to meet the current code and rules, or they says code there, but rules, and just making it safe for the kids to run on, because
So 380,000 will make it what it needs to be right now,
a total of the 2 together.
the 2 together.
Yeah.
Okay. So more than the original 500,000. We're at,
But the original $500,000 was just someone came and said resurface, just resurface.
okay.
And that number is actually a little bit higher than the quote because there's some unforeseen things. We don't know what the asphalt looks like under that track, so we don't know how much we're gonna have to spend when we get the track. It looks good from the top, but you don't know until you get back. The other company that we contacted is still working on quotes and is gonna get back to us, but they're both KCDA vendors, so in theory, they should come back pretty close because KCDA oversees those vendors. And those vendors are ones that, because if we go through KCDA, we don't have to get 3 bids and follow the state bidding laws. KCDA's done all that work for us. So they control the pricing, and it's state regulated pricing. So if we choose one of those options to redo, that's the price. And both of these companies have been reaching out to local contractors to see who can do some work as part of the track to give back to our community a little bit too. So. And we brought Jenny if you have any questions about athletics, the track.
How many high school kids are currently using it?
130 is how many we had out last year.
And how many middle school kids?
About 75-ish.
Okay.
So
It's the biggest in the CWAC. We have the biggest.
thanks to CWAC.
And the worst filled. Got it. Thank you.
Right now, can you hold any track events at it, or are there any scheduled in the future?
We have one scheduled for
I'm sorry, can you come and use the mic so that everybody on YouTube can also hear all of your details?
We currently have one scheduled for the beginning of April, where we're hosting 3 teams. I've reached out to other districts, and there's nothing really available where we could host in another district. But the problem also is finding volunteers to travel if we hosted somewhere else. It's really hard for us to even get volunteers to host at our own track meet. So I don't think people would want to travel if we host somewhere else. So that's kind of where we're at. We are scheduled for the beginning of April to host 3 teams.
And is that normal to have like one a year?
Yes, and a lot of CWAC schools also have invites, but we don't have an invite.
Currently.
Is
Currently.
that because of our lack of facilities?
Yes.
Everyone wants to go to Quincy, right?
Everyone wants to go to Quincy.
Hypothetical, Greg, if we got on something like this, if something like this was approved, time frame.
We're still in line to get this done over the summer if we had a decision in the next month. We looked at getting some of the work done early if we could get approval soon, start towards the end of the track you know, get groundwork done and stuff, but it'd have to wait until summer anyways. We still use that facility. The public still uses that facility. We want to just shrink the project as short as we can and keep it, just get it done rather than spread it out, so.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the big summary. So this is a high-level cost summary, essentially, and cost comparison. We're kind of divided it into two. So you have the major renovation side and you have the new construction side. That new construction is that proposed option for the PK6 school out on the Lee Road property. And then the major renovation is just that, the major renovation. So renovating at each elementary and just replacing those portables and building those new gyms. So again, these are just cost estimates. Some benefits on the major renovation side is obviously it's less expensive on the construction side and on the operations side. When you're looking at building a new facility, obviously you're looking at additional staffing that is needed at that facility. And on the new construction side, benefits, operational efficiency, and then reduced school size, reducing those K6 reducing those K6 school sizes down to a little bit more manageable level, getting out of those portables, and just, you know, kind of getting ready for growth.
But wouldn't that benefit hit both sides if we're either adding the classrooms on the major renovation side or the new construction? There's still going to be a reduced school.
The classrooms are just, on the major renovation side for K6, it's just replacing the portables.
So when you say reducing school size, you're saying take a campus that's 600, taking it down to 500 because we have another campus is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. I was thinking you were meaning classroom size, so
no.
I needed to clarify that. Thank you.
On the safety to be determined, does that include the transportation center at all? Or is this just the easy access or the system that Greg was discussing? I don't see anything on there for that.
We put
Yeah.
we put TBD just because we all those things under safety could be added or not be added. I mean,
Including the ORTC parking lot.
and yeah,
Yeah, so there was no safety amounts figured into the totals at the bottom just because we don't know what those are. They're very fluctuating.
And included in the OHS cost is not replacing the track. The track's not included in either of these.
I don't
No.
know.
No.
10.
The 9.5 is just classrooms, according to the other slide. I'm sorry, the 8.5.
I was like,
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the,
8.
the track wasn't included in this
'Kay.
because it's just
Right.
something that needs to be done.
Okay.
Okay, where can we get most of the state funding on this from? Would we get more state funding for new construction, or would we get more state funding for the K6, adding new classrooms?
so I'm assuming you're talking state funding, like state match, essentially.
State match, yes.
Um,
Where would we gain the most from them?
We briefly had the conversations. It's kind of early on to really look at that, but I think generally, isn't it about roughly going to be the same, probably?
Well, currently, we have state match funds available for 600 wing at the high school. From the last meeting with DAX, we had it was very little matching funds for elementary. So when it comes to state match funds, it goes K8 and 912 as there's 2 pots of money. So we're talking K6 and not doing anything with our middle school, but the middle school square footage still ties into the state funding at this time. And DAX was saying there was talk in legislation 6 months ago that they didn't know where it was going. We don't know where they're at on that right now, but changing the way state match comes out. Haven't heard back from DAX on any of that.
Similar to the slide previous, this looks at not at the track or the parking lot or those sort of safety features, but just looking at the instructional spaces versus adding physical classrooms and a new gym at the different elementary sites and then the high school renovations versus building a new pre-K 6 school. And there's a lot of things that both options have in common that would be advantageous, such as the class size reduction grant could be applied. Looking at the OHS 600 wing is obviously their needs are going to be still met. Food service, increased capacity, it meets instructional needs and has considerations for early learning. But there are some key differences as far as advantages and disadvantages to both. Looking at the new construction, first, one of the benefits is you're going to be gaining flexibility with the master schedule because Director Stevenson, just as you said, like you take a school that's at 650 and now it's back to 550. I'm just making up those numbers, but having those reductions, what those original special schedules and band and that sort of pieces were designed around was that student count. So you have some advantages there. Obviously, new spaces, and we can construct something that's going to be best meet our needs and needs of the students with that. Some of the challenges is going to be there's a delay with it. There's time when it will be years out by the time we agree on the plan and what it's going to look like until we have students in there. We're going to have to look at the attendance boundaries again and redesign, rework those, and the transfer of staff. And so, we'll have some staff, probably from each site that will need to be used to populate that new school site. When we look at the major renovations, it'll be the timeliness has the potential to be quicker, so we'll be able to feel some of those benefits faster. We can maintain the attendance boundaries, so those families and schools that are used to going to being a Scootney Star or a Hiawatha Thunderbird, they'll continue to have that. There are challenges while construction is happening, displacement of teachers, where before in new construction you maintain until right when it's done and then you go. When you're building and adding on at the current site, we might have to get creative with where classrooms are or teachers are and moving around while that's happening. And it's a phased construction. So while some things will be more immediate, other things will be taking longer over the course of time.
And last but not least, everyone's favorite topic, at least mine, financing and funding. So the district did budget for a $5 million transfer from general fund to capital projects to facilitate some district facility projects that we're wanting to move forward on. The district policy is to maintain a 10% minimum fund balance. Essentially what that means in terms of dollars for 1920 is about 6.7, almost $6.8 million. The fund balance at this point, based on the budget, is anticipated to be about 14.5 million without transferring funds. So if we transferred the 5 million, you'd drop that figure down to 9.5, which is still above the 10%. Also, currently, the district has approximately $54 million available in voted debt capacity. What that means is if we asked the public for $54 million for a bond, we could go out and sell $54 million worth of bonds. We have that capacity in our debt capacity. And then if we chose to go a non-voted debt route, so get a line of credit of some sort, and pay it back later with a capital levy or a bond, or if we chose to pay for it out of general fund, we have $5.3 million available to do that option. And that's what we got for you. Any questions? Come on, Jen.
I was going to ask, at the high school, I don't see, there isn't anything for an auditorium, nothing else for extracurricular stuff other than, the track renovation for the sports and additional classroom space. So there is nothing,
Or the new competition gym and locker
yeah,
rooms,
in
Right.
these figures, there's nothing like that, correct?
No, it was just instructional space.
classrooms.
I'm still concerned we're gonna lose our grant. If we have to run a bond and it doesn't pass,
No, it's not, we don't have to run a bond. We have to be in design phase, which means we have stuff on paper. Define
Yes.
what that means, please, in terms of how the state will agree to in design phase
Yeah.
for the 2.2 million.
Yeah, so we need to be working with architects, actively working on a plan, coming up with drawings, like, basically you're moving forward and you're, paying people to do,
Have a master
engineering
plan on what
studies
and where we're doing the
Yes.
classrooms. Okay, so that's what we have to do. We don't necessarily have to have a bond approved or even a levy approved, because if we decided to, we could come up with our own money to do that. If we have a plan by June, then the state will still approve it, even if we still decide we're going forward with a bond or a levy, and whether it's passed or not.
or we could still just add 10 rooms and take the grant and put out the 2.5 to 8 million to make the 10 rooms available to lower the class size of the K to 3.
Yes.
it's gonna cost more than that.
Yeah, 350 a square foot times 10,000 square feet. What was go back up a slide to the 600 wing?
3.5 million to do 10 classrooms-ish.
Ish.
And the state's giving us 2.2, so the state gives us half.
Well, and we
Ish.
watched it go up higher since the last 3 years.
Well, and that's I think, isn't that just classroom space? Does that include like hallways and bathrooms and?
I mean, that's gonna add to it, but I mean, that's why the 350 square foot comes into play, because it's just a arbitrary number, evenly spread across. Hallways cost less, classrooms cost more, science rooms cost more.
But in order to do classrooms, you have to do bathrooms, at least somewhere, 10 classrooms with a bathroom. That, again, goes up. Bathrooms are a lot more expensive than classrooms, more expensive than hallways. Trades offs.
But, yeah, also with that too, if we plan to keep the schools at about 650 students, we're also gonna have to address the cafeteria needs, the gym needs, if we plan to keep
Yeah, if you plan on
the
adding
schools
on.
at those numbers.
Onto the existing schools, you really need to think about the new gyms that are asked for. If you go to even Wahitas is crowded at lunchtime with the number of students that they have in that school, but the physical education teacher can still teach during those times, so it helps. When you take away that gym for a certain amount of time and you have, 2 to 3, 4 people cleaning up afterwards, trying to get it right back to where it needs to be, it takes time, and you've all seen that if you're in the building, so.
And I know we're going to have discussions, I'm sure, here after this, but since we're on this, I need to bring this up. On the option for a new PK6 school at the new property, has the infrastructure to get the utilities out to the location is it in this 25 to 30 million? Because I know we had discussions with the city and $12 million or something was tossed around is what it would cost. The developer not being ready to help or assist, was kind of waiting to see what we were going to do. Is that figure in this 25 to 30, or would it be in addition?
I think some of it is. We estimated a little high just to kind of accommodate that. Obviously, until we really hit the ground running, you won't know exactly what those costs are going to be, but we tried to include at least a little bit of it.
Okay, I'm going to throw a curveball at you, Jeanette. Did we get the lot next door? Was that discussed? Do you have any figures on that?
That one?
Yes.
Am I pointing the right way?
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm asking in the possibility of utilizing that for perhaps some of this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
don't know if we got that far or not.
we did, and we talked about it at the executive session.
Yeah, but do you have a number, I guess is where I was at.
Yeah, it was, I mean, just rough numbers, and it was, I will say it was under $1 million. That's all I will say.
That's good.
That's just to acquire the property, correct?
Just to acquire the property.
Okay, do we have plans? Does anyone have a plan? An idea? I have a plan. Okay.
No,
Surprise.
it needs to start somewhere, and
Yeah.
Right.
again, there is no silver bullet answer. We need to
No.
realize that going
Right.
into this.
Right.
We get paid the big bucks because these decisions are real easy to make.
Right.
They don't affect anybody.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, guys, we need to remember as we move on forward here, I think collectively, each one of us, all 5 of us have said that what we're doing for the kids. When we make these decisions that involve the folks that are here tonight inquiring or wanting to know, what's next, what are these guys going to do? I appreciate you for being here tonight. Whatever we decide, whenever we decide it, we are going to need the help of the community. So as we're having these discussions, as we go with what's going to be best, timelines, state match, all these things that come into play here, all these factors that are in here, I think we need to be upfront with ourselves and the community and knowing that it will involve help from them. We will need them. Our kids need these facilities. We need these services available. The safety goes without, we have to do something. So as we bring our ABCs, 1, 2, 3, priority list, whatever we're going to call them, let's just keep that in the back of our minds, that ultimately we are going to need help from everybody. Taxpayers will be summoned to help us try to accommodate. And we, I think, as a board, or as long as I've been on, have been very good stewards and tried to minimize the impact to the taxpayer while at the same time trying to maximize our contributions as a community. There is no right or wrong answers. If my 3 differ from any one of yours, that doesn't mean anything. And that is the beauty of this. That's why we're here tonight, to get together, put everything out there, and hopefully come out with something productive that is going to get this thing going.
Okay, can we either, do you want me to write this on the whiteboard, or can the district put this up as I'm saying it? Right, and costs. So, Ludocaga roof was not included, it was in the other discussions. I assume that is still, hopefully, insurance is paying. We're not moving forward with that plan. I'm just getting a head shake as a no. Because that was on my list.
Unfortunately, no catastrophic event happened to create the issue that's there.
Okay,
It's not leaking. We didn't have a rainstorm or, windstorm to create it to leak.
so insurance will not
Ins-
pay for it
insurance-
because of that.
Insurance doesn't want it, yeah.
So we have to pay for it. I know those
Yeah,
insurance
insurance
people are
guys.
awesome.
So, and it's not leaking. It's not, at this time, the roof is not leaking. It's not, there's not.
Is it still flapping in the wind?
It's still flapping in the wind.
Okay,
But, and there's a concern from maintenance that something needs to be done. But like the asphalt, we're working with it. We're doing
Okay.
what we can.
all right. Thank you for clarifying. Okay. I had Ludocaga roof on here. Transportation center parking, I say 2 million. I don't want to Band-Aid a problem anymore. I want to fix it. That was a number that came out. 2 million to fix it. This is just my priority A list, Jen's ideas. I don't know, whatever.
But it's a 1-year where
Guarantee on it.
guarantee is all right.
Yes. We're never going to get anything better than that. And this is not in priorities of most important to least important. This is what I think we need to focus on right now. So, transportation parking, 2 million. Next is the traffic renovation with the city. Let's call that 50,000. Track fix. Coming up with some of these words as I'm saying that. I had 500,000, but let's make that 650,000. The change is not really that much at the end. To do the facilities, I'm not sure what we called that. Cold, dry storage, custodial maintenance. What's the master name for that?
Food service.
Sure, warehouse, big old warehouse. This would not be this high on the priority list, but opportunities overcome the cost benefit here. So 3.5 million. Preschool permanent space, my intent was CBHA. I do have a backup plan here, but 11 million. Then, only because we need to start somewhere with a guinea pig, is Hiawatha's gyms and 6 classrooms. That could be any of the elementary campuses. I put 3.25 million. And Wahida says 6 classrooms, that's 1.6 million. You'll see why in a second. And then I put in, oh yes, 1.6. I put in safety for 500,000. We could start somewhere. Whenever the plan started, whether that ended up being a $3 million project, we need to start somewhere. So I put in 500,000. So my total for all of this, you're gonna have to go up so we can see total, is 2.25 million. 2.2 million of that would come from the state. That's why I picked Wahidas, because I know it's the newest, but it only needs classrooms. It doesn't need a gym also. If we're gonna put another 6 classrooms at another campus, we may as well do a gym while we're there, because it doesn't make sense to go there twice. Am I going too fast?
Just a little bit.
I'm just explaining this part. So, okay.
Back to number 9 roof for Lulukaga.
Oh, the roofs, I was hoping the roof was gonna be under insurance.
Okay.
So I didn't have a cost to that, actually.
And then what would you say the total cost was again?
The total cost is 22.5 million.
Good, because I heard 2 million as well.
Yeah,
Like,
so did
Oh,
I.
I'm
I was
sorry.
like,
Sorry.
wait, this is not adding.
22.5.
Yeah.
Okay, then minus from that 2.2 million from the state. We're talking about 20 million. All right? And the reason why the gym and the classrooms and the classroom is so we can take advantage of, under number 6 and number 7, is so we can take advantage of that 2.2 million, because if we don't get on that right away, we're gonna lose it. So if we take 5 million that we've already planned to come out of our general, or what we have already discussed, that means 15 million from local that we could do on a capital levy, whether that's a 3-year for 5 million a year, or we decide to do 4, or we do 4 million a year from the locals, and we try to come up with another million out of our slush fund up a year, or something along those lines. In 3 years, we could either go to bond or go to another levy and try to fix the rest. That was my proposal to start with. Hiawatha would be the guinea pig. We'd eventually get the other gyms and the other classrooms at the other 2 elementary schools. The high school would have a complete master plan, classroom addition. We decided at that time if we need to do a gym and auditorium. If we decided to do the Scootney Road to Nowhere, that money could come there. I know that the city, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We might be able to just say, hey, we're helping you with Ash, whatever. So that is my proposal.
So you don't have OHS at all?
No, I don't. Because opportunities of costs. This affects more kids faster, and the opportunity costs outweigh the long-range other costs. I'm not saying it's a be-all, end-all answer. I'm trying to come up with the cheapest and still getting the biggest bang.
I'm just gonna throw my thoughts out there.
Please do.
I tend to be a little bit pro-growth. I feel like we bought that land. I wasn't a part of that decision, but that's the hand we have. And so utilizing that and affecting, if we go Jen's route and we don't go to bond for 3 years, then it will be another 3 years before we have a school. So then we'll be 6 years away from having a new school. So I would prefer to go to bond sooner and build a school so that in 3 years we have kids walking into a new school that would affect all of the other elementary schools. Unless we have 6 years to wait. I guess I don't know. Jeanette, you tell me. Do we have 6 years at what we currently have?
So, based on the cohort survival method, basically looking at the average trend over the last 5 years for students progressing in grades, the elementaries are looking pretty flat. There, is some wiggle, and obviously we have some growth within the community that's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to pinpoint. But just looking at that methodology, our elementaries look to be pretty stagnant. Obviously, depending on kinder. Kinder is kind of that wild card. You just never know sometimes. But in looking at that methodology, within 3 years, the high school will be at 1,400 students. They're already over by 100 plus students. So to add 400 or 300 students on top of that would be a very big squeeze, in my opinion.
Could you pull up the figures to do a full high school remodel again?
No, that's just added classroom space, not a remodel.
So that's not a full high school remodel. Do you have the figures on what it would take to do a high school remodel?
So, from the last bond. Yeah, I was gonna say, is that in board docs?
The
Or-
last full
or
high
is-
school remodel had a lot of classrooms, a full auditorium with 1,500 seats.
And then a performance gym, right?
Yes, I'm hearing a yes from the audience on the gym.
And that's not even on the table now? I mean, is that not something no?
Anything's on the table.
I'm just,
I'm for remodeling the high school, 600 and 200 wing and adding classrooms. They're already I think, crowded. I don't think we can leave them out. And I'm not thinking that you take one elementary school when you're 3, which has the lowest amount of kids, oversized, 49, and put a gym in there unless you're going to give them to the other 2 schools.
I'm not saying we don't. I'm
Yeah.
saying and as I said, pick one.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter which one it is.
I don't think-
I just use that as the
Yeah.
example.
I don't think it could be one. But I
And
think
that's
we-
the start, because just like Luticago was the guinea pig when they did the remodels on all of the elementary schools, then you'd go, okay, this didn't work, this did work, whatever. I'm not saying don't do the others. I'm saying this was a phase plan to start somewhere.
when they started the remodel on
Hold
Luticago,
on. Sean, can we wait? I was planning on doing like 10 or 15 minutes at the end and give you folks, since you guys are here, a clarifying question or something. Perhaps not in, like we're calling a silver bullet answer, but we would like to hear suggestions, recommendations, but if we could leave it towards the end, is that all right? perfect.
When they did the remodel on Luticaga, had they already run a bond? So did we have the money to do all the remodels and they just started at Luticaga? Okay, so we knew that we had the money to phase that into the other
Yes,
schools.
that was always the plan. Right.
Okay.
So in looking at the documents on board docs, the high school, I don't know when this was done, how many years old it is. It's probably several years old. Yeah, with the additional locker rooms, 1,500 seat auditorium and competition gym, plus the, let's see, remodeling the 200 wing, the 600 wing, Husky court, and 10 classrooms. That is $24.7 million.
Okay.
Part of why I left Othello High is because it's not just classrooms that we need there. We need a whole other slew of things, and
Right.
we need to have a master plan. We can't just start adding classrooms without being prepared with a plan to eventually add a new competition gym with the potential of adding an auditorium, whatever size that ends up being at some point. So.
I think those have to come after. If we add the rooms at the high school, I thought the plan was to build it so it connected to the corridor. Did I just hear that somewhere?
Yeah, that was one of the plans,
Yeah.
was connect to the quarter. Just the the current way funding is, Lindsay, when you were asking that question before about did we have the money, the bond before Luticaga and everything else? Typical is you pass your bond first, and then you get the matching funds to help pay for your architectural fees and engineering fees. If we do the bond afterwards, say we're gonna design it first, it's all out of our pocket, and we don't get that money back.
Right.
And that's, potentially 2 to 3 million per site, so that can add up really quick.
Okay.
And then, yeah, the 600 wing, this master plan was to get rid of that and then tie it in and create a master plan for the whole building. And just another caveat to throw in there for you, the OHS senior hall, commons, gym, it comes up for matching funds in 10 years. So it's good and bad for Jen's plan. But just so more information for you.
Wasn't there some state match though, Greg, for the replacement of the 600 wing?
Yes, there's state match on the
There's-
table for 600 wing.
Approximate number?
It changes, it would change with the enrollment for this year. And as we increase our size, if we add portables or just absorb the capacity as that increases, that cohort's gonna change over time too.
I'm not saying this is a great master plan. I'm saying we need to start somewhere and put something down. That's where I'm going. Take advantage of the most funds that we could get right now.
Can we go back to Jen's list? So on here, 5, 6, and 7 is about $15.1 million. And that would take care of 2 elementaries. If we built a new pre-K through 6,
And a preschool.
pre-K through 6, and we were creative, could be, the figures are 25 to 30. I'll use a $25 million figure. That 16.1 is absorbed in that, and it diminishes the other expense. And I tend to agree with Lindsay. We bought the property intentionally. Growth is inevitable with some of the changes that are occurring in our community, and a few conversations I've had with the mayor, I think there's more growth on the way. I think we need to be proactive, and in whichever way we go, keep that in mind and be prepared for it. So if we did build a new facility, it would free the others, or reduce the class size in the others. If we had a growth spurt, unfortunately, we would be back to perhaps the same situation, overcrowded at the elementaries again. But I think it would, if we, priorities, my biggest one is the overcrowding. And if you alleviate that, and the overcrowding, unfortunately, is the mother problem that brings on all the other stuff that's necessary.
Right.
One thing that stuck with me on that visit we did was the kitchen area at Scootney.
Yeah.
I don't know if in the K6, the remodel or the new construction, I mean, that's addressed anywhere. But them poor folks, something needs to be done.
Yeah.
Hiawatha, the same thing. Scootney, I got a Scootney, and they need it like real bad. So I would be more appreciative, Jen, of this. And I totally agree with you that we need to get something and start something concretely, you know, because what I don't want is for us to put 6 lists up here and we think we're good and we're going to go to the superintendent and say, you know what, figure this out, bring us figures, and we can't get DAX or we can't get whoever's going to help with these figures out for another 2 or 3 months, and we're still going to wait and see what's next. But I'm more I'm ready to, I think building this new school would alleviate the renovation portion, the 10.65 that's on the major renovation side, plus the 11 to 13 on the proposed CBHA remodel thing. I mean, if I put those two together, we've eliminated that and we've freed up space at the elementaries now. On my list, I had the student overcrowding. I had the preschool, whether it was a new building or adding the classrooms. To me, safety is huge. There's a lot of stuff going on, whether we want to face it or not, in this little town, at our schools, that is of concern. So we need to be proactive, be prepared. The food service, the storage, the big warehouse, whatever we're going to call this. Hearing from folks that milk is frozen or outdated, that's got to stop happening. So that would, to me, I'd probably put it higher, but I'm thinking that can be alleviated with the 5 million set aside to where we could just pay for that and it wouldn't even have to be on this list. And we would solve food service, surplus storage, dry, freezer, everything. I really don't think that would be on a list necessary as part of a bond or a levy or anything. I think that's something we could take care of. I mentioned that, not because I want it on this list, but in my overall thinking of trying to, like you said, Jen, do the most we can with the least amount of burden to our community members, and just be smart about this. And this master plan that we've talked about for a while now has to be inclusive of all these needs. We need to think about these kindergartners and 12 years from now, what this system's going to look like for them, and be prepared. So these are hard decisions to make, but I think based on the information we have tonight, I would be more in favor of a new facility. I still think something needs to be done at the high school. I don't want to wait till later or see what comes of this. The operations, it's on both the renovation and major renovation, new construction. I think that could be omitted off the total amount, because I think we could, if we chose to, take care of that and pay for it. So I think the numbers down here might be inflated for that. I don't know if that, Jeanette, is something where these owners are willing to carry the financing to where we could utilize that money elsewhere more efficiently. And I mean, I don't know if they're willing to work with us. I know we had a discussion at one time.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any information that pertains to
Yeah,
that.
they are willing to work with us. One thing we have to consider when we're talking about long-term financing or a lease option or anything like that is any major or even minor changes to the building. Those can be kind of sticky when you're dealing with like a lease situation, because you're changing and modifying somebody else's building technically.
Right, but not when it's owner financing. If they're owner financing, they're just working as a bank.
Yeah, if we
And
do
so-
owner financing, like a lease to own.
Right, if
Then that would
if
be
they're willing to do owner financing, then, I mean, we don't have to pay all that money out of pocket right up front.
Mm-hmm.
We are able to make payments and then maybe use that money to do something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't speak with them specifically about a lease to own option, just a lease option, but they seem pretty open to conversations and willing to work with the school.
I have something else totally, it's like a plan B, but we've never discussed it before.
But we're going to discuss it tonight.
Yep, we're gonna discuss it now. If we bought CBHA with the intent of turning it into district office space, I think that there would be minor renovations that would have to take place for it to be functioning quickly. It could even be only one floor or only part of the building for now. This building becomes potentially up to 10 classrooms of preschool. We already own this building. Less cost for renovations there. Potentially expand by the space next door in the future to expand preschool. I think cost, we've never discussed that, so we don't know what the cost is. I think the cost to do that would be less than buying CBHA and completely renovating it, even though we never agreed with the $11 to $13 million cost.
So, in my opinion, so 10 classrooms for preschool is not large enough to accommodate both regular ed and special ed preschool. So we would
It's
be
not
splitting
a
those.
long-term solution. It's a give them about what they have now, free up the middle school, and then go if we did a part levy and then we went later on with a bond, it would be part of the bond now we're gonna buy this and now we're gonna do add-on to what we need. So it's like a two-phase preschool plan, where not all of it is up front, not all of it is the district, or is the community's expense right off the bat. It's just like a two-phase part. And we do still have other spaces, the OSD preschool building that is not, anyways. You're right. No, right now there's 7 classrooms that's being used for classrooms at preschool. So if we took this building that's 14,000 square feet and turned it into 10 classrooms,
Yeah, so it'd be 7 plus common spaces.
right. So if we turn this into 10, adding some extra space for commons, there's already a bathroom, they already walked down the hall to go to a bathroom. This could function with less cost, I think, than CBHA. Yep, just throwing a big wrench right in there.
Did we ever get from Columbia Basin Herald what it costs to operate and maintain that building every year?
CBHA, not
Or
Columbia Basin
CBHA.
Herald, is what he meant.
Excuse me.
We all knew you
Columbia
meant.
Basin Health, yeah, CBHA. What it costs for operation and maintenance?
No,
Because we'd also be absorbing that cost if we did purchase that building.
yes,
Not
that's
only
true,
that,
utilities.
would be all the extra
Custodial,
custodial and all the
maintenance.
others. I do believe we need to address our overcrowding right now too. I believe we need to do something at the high school right away. I believe we could take down that 600 wing. The new wing would connect up with the current corridor, and we could even make it connect up with the 700 wing. So that would help close that campus off a little bit more. I wouldn't even mind seeing a 2-story facility there to help for the classrooms sizes. I know we haven't got the acreage, but we could always go up. So that's one of my ideals. The preschool, I love the preschool. I love what it's doing, but it's hard for me to go out and spend 11 to 13 million right away for that one grade level or that one level when we have other needs through K through 12 that we got to. I see a better fit for the preschool in a new facility along with the K-6, like Mike was mentioning. We could absorb that cost a lot better into that facility.
I'm concerned about building a new campus and still not adding gyms at 3 campuses that don't have a gym and a cafeteria. I still think that that
But-
would have to be a mandatory thing, even if the campuses became 500. So we're not, what Mike's number was 15 million for CBHA and the 2 whatevers,
Yeah, 16.
the adding, you know, I mean, compared to 16 million compared to 25 to 30 million for another thing, when we're still gonna be adding more gyms. I feel like that would have to still be a necessity to add gyms to the other campuses that don't have them.
So-
So it just
The
keeps
25
racking
to
that
30,
number up higher and higher.
If we use the lower number, and I'm being hopeful here, of course, and I
Right.
realize that, it's 1.25 for the new gym at the 3 elementaries. There's another 3.75 million added to the 25. Maybe we could do all 3 gyms and this new facility for the 30 million. I don't know. Again, wishful thinking.
Right.
I agree with you, but I think if we coordinate some of these things, I think it's still doable. But I'm stuck on this. The new pre-K facility would lower the classroom size. We utilize the grant, and it gives us a purpose for the acreage over there. That's another thing that it's not that important, but it is. I mean, we have some issues there with whoever we lease this to, or if we're going to or not, or what we're gonna do, if we're gonna have barren ground there sitting for umpteen years and doing nothing with it, which isn't one of the smartest things to do. I don't know, your plan B just threw more thoughts into my mind, and that's why these things can go on forever and ever.
Yep.
And my thoughts behind, a possible new K-6 would be lowering the numbers also amongst the other schools. Along with right behind that would be the Central Food Services, because that would help alleviate some of the pressures that the current cafeteria has at those facilities. I mean, would be going from 650 students back down to 500 students. So it would help that quite a bit. So that would also help on some of those core issues that we're having. Right now, when you have an assembly at Scootney or one of those schools, and all the kids in that gymnasium fills it up.
Yeah,
And if you could take another 150 students out of that, that would definitely help quite a bit.
agreed. For me, for my priority list, the track, the storage warehouse, like Mike was saying, I think we could figure out a way to owner finance that or something so it's not a huge chunk and we don't have to add it to our master budget. Same with the traffic study for 50,000. I figure we can come up with that money on our own. So as far as money that we go to bond with, my priority is the track, the new facility that would be the pre-K through 6th grade that would alleviate all that pressure. If we can afford it, add a gym at each of the elementary schools and renovate the high school.
So go to bond. I think you're over the 54 million that we could go for bond right now. Not that,
Probably getting pretty close.
just, right. Okay.
If we couldn't do a full remodel of the high school and get all of our hopes and dreams as close as we could get is what I would like to do. If we're already, dumping a lot of interest into our kindergarten through 6th grade, our preschool through 6th graders, our high school, I mean, we've been just slapping Band-Aids on it since I was in high school at Othello High School, and so it needs some TLC in a big way.
I agree, the high school does need a lot of work. But where I see our most need at the high school right now is additional classrooms.
Yeah.
And that's a start.
Yeah.
These new classrooms could be part of a master plan. I know
Yeah.
we need to put a master plan together for that high school, but the classrooms would be a start for it.
Yeah, that's what I
And-
mean.
and it
If
could be
it
built
can't
in
be
with
all the
it.
hopes and dreams of the auditorium, plus the gym, plus
Yeah.
at least it could be
The-
a stepping stone of getting to
Yeah.
where we need to go.
The track, that's something that we could decide as a board within the next couple of months to go ahead and we have the money already for that, to go ahead and get that done, and that would satisfy that
And
need right away.
Greg, what did you say our timeline was for getting the approval for the track? In order to have it done this summer, we need to make a decision by
About 1 month.
about 1 month? Okay, so we gotta get serious about the track.
Part of why I added some of the things to my list, which are basically in you guys' list, just not listed. I mean, you're saying that we need to do them, is because, and why I came up with getting up to 22 million is because I think in order to go to a levy or even to a bond, whatever we need to do, we need to show it's gonna cost 22.5 million to do all of these things. However, we're only gonna go to the taxpayers for 12 to 15 million. And this is how we're gonna get there, and this is why. To show that it's not, oh, hey, we wanna do this grand million, $50 million project, and you're gonna come up with $49 million worth of it. And so I think, like the track renovation and some of these other things, we need to be able to show the traffic renovation with the city. Yeah, we don't really need to, sure, we got the district has $50,000 that we could just say, yes, we're doing that, but we need to be able to say, here's the big master plan, and you're coming up with 50 to 60% of that cost, so that when we go big later on, or the second ask, we can already show that we're good stewards of the funds. So whatever the plan ends up being at the end, because we all have to, 3 of the 5 of us have to agree, we need to still think about in terms of how do we have to have public money no matter what.
Right.
We have to have public buy-in. In order to get that, we have to have all of these different ducks in a row and steps together.
So is it appropriate or inappropriate to ask the people that are here?
I just want to make one comment. Yeah, I think
Okay.
it is appropriate, and again, with gratitude to them. Transportation at 2 million, what did it cost for the whole facility when we built it? Wasn't it like 4.5 or something? I struggle with putting $2 million into a parking lot with
Amen.
a 1-year guarantee on a facility that costs 4.5.
But then we just
It's
keep letting it
necessary.
get worse.
I realize
and
that.
wor-
It's
Okay.
necessary.
All right.
I'm having a hard time digesting that. I mean, it's tough. Why don't we put 4 million into a new facility elsewhere? Let's buy a different
just
location and
abandon
redo it.
that?
Well, turn it into something else. Maybe that becomes storage. Maybe, I don't know.
Essential service.
I just can't wrap my mind around
That we
putting,
have other
More
deliveries to, Forum semis,
Hey, let's
and
make
no
that-
problems with the.
Let's make that our preschool.
it's just,
Right.
and that's what's so hard about these things. But a $2 million renovation, and it's an estimate, it could be more now, because that
Right.
was a year ago or whatever it was, into a project that cost 4.5.
Mike, yeah, and that estimate was over the phone. I mean, that wasn't an on-paper estimate. That was, give me a number, give me something, it's gonna be high.
And was that to put the lining under the whole
That
lot
was to tear it all
Tear it
out
all out?
and redo it.
and redo it?
So you're talking cost to tear everything out, not just install on that.
And that was just to put a lining underneath it. That still don't solve the problem of the river flowing under.
Well, you're never gonna solve the
Leave it.
river flowing under. That river flowing under is to us is not normal, but you go on the west side, that's normal. There's always water. We dig
Yeah.
3 feet down for rock, they dig 12 feet down to build on clay. I mean, so
My concern, Jen, going to your point, in the citizens not thinking we're good stewards over money, is spending $2 million to rip out and then next year we have potholes again. And it's like, well, that was $2 million. My bad. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
So
That's my
does
concern
60
with-
million buy us some time, Greg?
60,000.
60,
yes,
too many millions.
you did the same thing I did in that email. Add an extra zero.
So 60,000 would repair the multi-areas that we have.
One spot at a time.
Was a conservative local estimate from a local contractor.
But for one area or for all the affected
It
areas?
was like 3 areas he came out and looked at, said I could cut it out here and tear it up and put down the the lining, new gravel, re-asphalt in this specific area and.
And it would
fix this.
be where the fuel station
fuel
is.
Yeah, fuel station was
Because to me,
included.
that's like the
That's the
biggest thing
priority.
out
Yeah.
there. Going back to being stewards of our taxpayers' money, that may be seen as not good or efficient, but in the grand scheme of things, it's almost like you have to do something. So are we okay to hear some suggestions or something?
I would
now?
love to hear what the community has
If you
to
guys
say.
want to, could you come to the mic, either Mr. Sean or whoever?
Got some dumb truck driver questions for you. Where does this mandate for preschool come from?
So we aren't answering, we're not answering question, we're answering clarifying questions or giving your opinion. We're not having a two-sided conversation.
Great.
I'll say this, Sean.
Two-sided conversations can happen with us
I can understand that.
personally.
I can understand that.
I'll answer it this way, and I hope I'm correct in my assumption here, or my answer. The district vision right now basically looks at a holistic approach to education, which includes pre-K. The vision, the mission of the district, where it sits today, that is part of it. Statistics have proven that with the preschool, our kids, by the time they get to kinder, and this is repeated throughout every elementary school we visit, are way better prepared. So I don't see it as a mandate per se. Do I see it as good for the Othello School District to be proactive in that? What, does it enhance our kids' knowledge? Does it make them better prepared? Yes. Is it a mandate? Does every single school district do it? No. But I think where the vision is right now of the district, it is inclusive of that.
Okay.
Not necessarily, like I said, a mandate.
I appreciate that.
There is state funds that does cover those costs as well.
Okay, here's where I'm coming from. All three of my kids are in the Othello School District. And when my children were little, my youngest now is in 4th grade, they all did the Ready for Kindergarten preparedness classes. That works when you have parents at home that are proactive in helping the kids read those books, play those games, and I'm not poo-pooing preschool, but I'm looking at Jen's super awesome list of great stuff up here, and there's $11 million for preschool. We have, what was it, $8.5 million to do high school renovation. You want gymnasiums at 4 different elementary schools, okay? That $11 million, in my view, just as an arrogant truck driver, could be better spent on our high school, which has absolute needs, not just wants. I want preschool, but I need to take care of our high school facilities. In my mind, that's how I see it, okay? So I'm okay with a K through 6, but a pre-K, meaning preschool through 6, I'm not down with preschool. I like it, but I don't love it. It's like leather seats in a car. It's not a need. It's a desire. Okay? So that's where I'm coming from. And for me to come on board as a taxpayer for $11 million for preschool, that's a big ask. And I realize there's matching funds and grants and stuff like that. Okay? I get that. But if you take that sacred cow off the table, you can take care of what's really important, in my view, as an arrogant truck driver. Okay? I've been up since 5 this morning. I slept in. I usually get up at 2:30, so I'm stretching it here to be here tonight. And I'm here because I care. I'm here because this matters. So, you know, I don't have a global, holistic view of all of this, guys, but there's $11 million. Take the sacred cow off the table, move forward, and you're going to get some support from me. But if you got that on there, forget it. And that's just me. But I'm an arrogant truck driver. I got friends. So, thank you.
No, thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? I noticed there was some agreements with good job. Is the feeling mutual? It is?
She has to come to the mic to
Yeah,
say
I was gonna
something.
say, I mean,
Sorry.
if you would.
No, I just agree with him. I don't understand why we are paying for preschool.
Okay. Appreciate the input. Thank you.
I do have a question.
You have to come to
can
the
you
mic.
Teresa Cohen. Whose idea was it to have a preschool? Whose idea?
I think when I came on board, that was part of the vision, but there's a long history of research behind that as well. So it's not as simple as probably Sean Bates made it sound, just to get rid of preschool, that concept. But it was me that came to the district, and I shared with the board when I came on board about the research, about some readings as well around preschool and early learning, and preparing our younger kids to go into kindergarten. So that was me, to answer your question.
Okay. But we had preschool. You had to pay for it, but we had preschool. Now we don't have those anymore. So everybody goes. And how much money do you get for the preschool?
So we've had preschool in the.
Can you use a mic?
So we've had preschool in the school district for over 14 years. And in those 14 years, it has not been a paid program. It was smaller, but we've offered it for years. And so when Dr. Hurst came on the district, we have doubled in size, but we've had it for 14 plus
So
years.
you've
It
always
was not a
had
paid program.
You've always had free preschool.
Correct, yes.
How come nobody else heard about it till now?
The families that were in it heard about it at that time. And there was limited spots. We only had a limited number of spots. And then, like I said, when Dr. Hurst came on board, then we've doubled the size, but we've had it for a number of years.
Well, so it wasn't free to everybody because they didn't know about it.
It was whoever came and registered and
If you
took part of
didn't
it.
know about it.
Can you
would
please
not
talk
come
into the mic
register.
so that those on YouTube can hear
If you-
exactly what you're saying? You need to put it right next to your
If you
mouth.
did
I know
not-
it's a pain.
If you did not know about the preschool, you wouldn't sign up for it. And I've lived here for 40 years, and I didn't know about it.
Did you have children 14 years ago?
I had, yeah, both my boys
In
went to
the-
school here.
Well,
No,
I mean,
they went to preschool, and I paid for it. So,
same with my 4.
That's right.
I understand.
And that's the way it should be.
So the cost to the district, I think you specifically asked the question,
Yeah.
what is the cost to the district for the current preschool program?
Mhm.
There's a specific number.
There's no numbers.
There is a number.
Oh.
She just has to turn on her mic.
Currently, that number is about $1 million.
Oh, so it's not
The-
really free.
The district
To us.
annual budget is $67 million
Okay.
for 4,500 students-ish.
Yes.
So there's $1 million
K-12.
of that 67 million is the cost of the preschool.
That could be used somewhere else
Some of that funding is also
instead of the
grant.
preschool. I think if parents.
So some of that expense of the $1 million comes from a grant,
Yes,
you're saying?
yes.
So cost to the local, is there any cost to local?
Yes, there is cost to local. I haven't done the calculations lately. I feel like we're down to between 600 and 700,000 of local funds.
Okay.
So the
So
rest of it is from a grant.
But what I'm saying, it's not really free if we are paying $700,000 for it.
Free
And
lunch is
Right.
not free,
No, free lunch is not free.
right? And there has been a longstanding admittance from the board that when people say free, it doesn't mean free.
Well, I don't mind feeding the children, but I don't want to pay for their schooling.
Okay, this has become a little operational in nature. Any suggestions when it comes to the plans, other than the suggestion or idea of Mr. Bates of taking
Well,
number 5 off of there.
I think the plan about buying CBHA is terrible.
Okay.
I think if you already own property and you want to build a school, then that's what we should do. How much property does the school own right now?
I know there's
7 schools,
7 campuses.
2 churches, the Hofstadter building, the storage shed on Broadway.
we can get you an exact number. I don't know that anybody's prepared tonight to have
Okay.
actual. Appreciate your input, though. Thank you. We're good?
Mr. Kirkwood, no comments? I've been dying to know what you think. No? Okay.
All right, guys, so what's our next step? Where do we go from tonight? What information, what requests do we have of the district administration? What figures do we want? Are we ready to synthesize this into a list that'll be voted on, approved, consensus of all 5 of us? Or do we still need more information?
What can we do right now out of this list? What are we able to afford to accomplish right away with the money that we have that would address some of these needs?
Maybe get that information by the next board meeting?
Yes.
Would that be okay? Okay?
Just to clarify, so what you're asking is essentially, because we have the $5 million transfer that we've budgeted for,
Central services, track,
so
parking lot.
essentially, what things would we recommend that you move forward with that $5 million in mind? That was my interpretation
start,
of what you
yeah.
said.
A start. Well, you know, what out of these different things that we brought up that we could possibly afford, and start moving forward right now instead of discussions all the time.
Yeah.
And what,
In the hopes of maybe our
So-
list not consisting of warehouse storage on all
And-
5 of them.
Right.
and some of that money might be starting design phase too, possibly. Do we start to look at the design phase of a high school or a K? I wouldn't mind putting out the little extra money in the beginning to have a good plan down or facility or a drawing down to show the public when we do go ask for a bond, that they know exactly what they are going to be getting for that money. Not an ideal, but a good, solid plan.
I think that we also need to know if we're gonna go to a levy or a bond, what are the next few due dates for those, and which voting cycles?
Okay.
And then, do we want to know the preschool wrench cost?
You and your wrenches.
I know. Do we want to even come up with a number for if that's a cost? If that's a possibility. To put district office at CBHA, to turn this into a preschool
Oh.
space, currently, what would those 2 costs be? Yeah, a lot of offices would have running water in them. You know, those kinds of things. Is that a doable thing? Putting preschool here, rough estimates. Do we want to know what those numbers are?
For me, I'd like to see the preschool be at the pre-K, at the new school.
So when we're talking a pre-K 6 facility, basically they would be sharing all the same core areas. Basically, you're just talking more classrooms built on that facility for the pre-K facility. And how many classrooms would that involve in that facility compared to the rest of K through 6? How many classrooms for K through 6
So
would
that,
be needed?
yeah, so that would be part of the design, and we would need to look at what capacity we want to build for at the elementary K-6 level and at the preschool level, have those conversations. I think that would be part of it. Shared common space is something we could look into. I know some of the ideals, I don't know if they're necessarily requirements per se, but some of the ideals for common core space for preschool versus K-6 are different. And so we would need to look at all of those specifics and all that good stuff that I don't really understand much at all.
So basically, if we took the classrooms from all of the elementaries that are the proposed to take out of portables, that's 22 classrooms, but every other campus is 24, generally for K-6, for the other campuses of elementary schools. And you're talking 100 kids in preschool a year-ish? No?
180, 200.
200 kids in preschool a year, that is 20 kids per classroom, so that's another 10 classrooms.
Does that include sped?
So you're talking minimum 34 classrooms.
Correct, based on those rough calculations.
Because then you still have to add
Core space, yeah.
Core
Right.
space.
and art, yeah, band, all that.
Sharon, where are you at? Let's
Oh, I thought I'd given my list. Maybe you should write it down. My thing is I was on that facility committee, and have we done anything that we've looked at what the committee suggested?
Many of these things are,
Yeah.
Many
well,
of
I was
these
on the
things are.
committee. I don't know, I mean, I didn't.
well, if you look at the
Yeah.
list that they put in, I mean, it was kindergartens at each thing. They need warehouse storage, basically. Track wasn't on the list because track wasn't aware at that
No,
time.
I understand.
Gyms,
Neither
high
was-
school
neither was-
renovations.
Neither was the transportation. My thing is I still wanted to see the 600 wing and the 200 wing, and the 3 schools to have additional rooms with gyms. And I think we have to look at the food service, especially because it's something we can just afford to buy right now. When the little girl asked me, how can I help with the chunky milk, then in 4th grade or 5th grade, I'm not sure what grade it is, I'm embarrassed because I don't have an answer. I told her I'd look into it. At the facility meeting, and I think you remember, my first issue was safety. But I don't know that putting a lock on doors when we have portables sitting outside that are not connected, that we have kids that have to walk way around to get to the main office. That safety is part of the safety, not just putting locks on the doors. I mean, we have to look at the whole picture of safety. That was one of my first things. We can't go overboard where we can't afford. We can't go overboard where we're asking people in the community to choose when we have too big of a list. They're not gonna go for anything. We have to see what we can pay for first. But that was mine. I mean, yes, removal of the portables in order to make the safety, and even at the high school, to continue, to add that 600 wing to the corridor.
Gyms too. I think her list was gyms.
Well, yes, have you guys been in there when they've had assemblies?
on the ground at times.
It's horrendous. When you see the little kids sitting, for example, at Scootney, it's kindergartners going out to 6th grade in a confusion of any kind of a problem. How are those little kindergartners not gonna be stamped on? People are gonna be running everywhere. And there's a depth of about 1, sometimes 2 if you can get them in their parents that can sit. Those are disaster areas, and the classrooms, the time that the gym is taken away for the gym teacher and other things that we could use in that area. So those are my suggestions, but I don't think we can go so far above that the community won't say yes on something when you go so far ahead. Because now you're looking at our levy that we're trying to pass, then you want to look at a capital levy or a bond. We can't go so far above that people aren't going to even look at any of it. So, I mean, there is no simple answer, definitely. Every time you look at your list and you look at the things available, your mind can change. Like you
Right,
said,
I feel like the longer we wait, then our list gets longer.
it gets longer.
Our list goes from A, B, C to A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean,
XYZ.
yeah, the longer we put it off, the more, now then every school is gonna need a major renovation and a new school and a new, you know what I mean?
I mean, is a track a endangerment to people walking on it because the community uses it besides facility that we use for school sports? That doesn't just include track. I mean, we've got the football field. They do soccer games out there periodically, don't they?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know that we can come up with a concrete, this is the only way that works.
Chris, do you think you have enough information to modify stuff?
What do you think?
And I know it's a big ask, I realize that.
So I've come away with, I'm gonna call it the $5 million plan, for lack of better creativity on my part. And then also the deadlines for the next few ballot cycles. Is there something I'm missing that the general board, as a collective, wants information on?
As you go through the list, if there's redundancies, if they can be created into one with potential costs. And I know that what we say today is probably going to be more a year from now. And I know you guys, when you're doing these calculations, factor that in there. But the uncertainty of it all, like Greg said, even state match and how it can potentially change. That can be a $2-3 million surplus, who knows, depending on what the legislature does. Or
It was $5.5 million last year for the bond, so.
it could go backwards if they all of a sudden decide that, no, we're paying too much for that or what have you. So I realize that these numbers aren't going to be as concrete or anything. But are we good with getting that information as quick as we can? And I don't want to burden them when, Monday at the next board meeting. If you can, that'd be awesome. You guys are superstars. But is that good enough for direction for tonight, guys?
I think so.
Is there anything else?
So are
that
you
we-
asking for that information at the Monday night meeting?
If possible, I think I'm asking too much if I hold them to that, unless you guys.
We will try our best to be superstars,
Okay.
because we're superstars.
Yeah, and it's out of necessity. It really is out of
Yes.
necessity, and I realize that every one of us that's here, we're in this for the kids. And it may entail some extra work from all of us, but if we can, that would be just super awesome. Do you guys have any other questions, Chris, of us?
Ooh, I have one
Oh,
more
go
thing to add. Jeanette, would it be possible for you to see if owner financing is an option for us for the storage facility?
Yes.
Okay.
You're talking lease to own, not leasing, correct?
I'm talking about owner financing, meaning
For
Harvest Fresh holds the note. The facility holds the note, and they work as the bank.
You'll pay interest.
Right. But it's not all. Then maybe we can do two projects. We can secure the facility.
Interest on.
Okay.
$50,000 a year. $1 million.
Okay.
Maybe they're willing to work with us.
So
and
then, at our
interest-free.
Monday meeting, we will come up with, we'll have this as part of our board discussion, and then we'll come up with a new plan as to when we're meeting
A
again and
potential
what's the
meeting, yes.
next
Yeah.
steps that we take. Okay.
Well, I want to thank members in the audience that were here. I want to thank everyone that participated tonight. Thanks, Chris, and your staff for the presentation. I thank all of you for your input tonight. I think this has been a productive meeting. We've got some hard decisions to make, but I will continue to insist that we keep at the forefront that we're doing this for the betterment of our students, and not just the students of today. I mean, some of the decisions we're making are going to affect kids that aren't even born yet. So these are important decisions. And to the public that's listening, you need to be cognizant or be aware that the five of us up here are very aware that there are, there are a lot of households that are financially stretched, that are perhaps in turmoil. And we're aware of all those things, and we're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to be stewards of your tax dollars, maximizing those as much as we can, and I can assure you that as a board, we'll continue to keep that at the forefront. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Having completed all business, this special meeting is adjourned.